Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Eating Peace. Wow, it's been a little bit of time since I did one of my usual live videos, just heavy into offering a retreat online for an entire week, just in the simple work of Byron Katie with my dear colleague, Tom Compton, and uh, heavy, deeply into the actual Eating Peace program and Year of Inquiry. So here I am back. Eating peace is always possible in every moment, even if there's a break. So, great question came up about noticing the moment, moving towards food and eating. Have something in your mind, a vision, a picture, an image of food that is perhaps factory created, really sweet. It doesn't matter what it is, really, but there's an obsessive movement towards that. You have the idea that I must eat that. I want it. That's the thing for me. Get out of my way. There's nothing that can stop me. So that has begun. That urge has begun, which becomes urge, always becomes urgency. There's a movement that feels fast. And the brakes are also on the same time getting put on because part of us knows where that goes, where this wanting goes is painful. In many ways, it's interesting to notice that both experiences are of suffering. I am suffering in the wanting of this thing. I am suffering in the not wanting of this thing. Mind will say that perspective becomes there is no peaceful experience of this moment. There's no experience that could be peaceful in the presence of this food and eating and this impulse to eat something that I know doesn't wind up working with my body. An inquirer was sharing that she's been on a certain way of eating that feels really right to her, that feels calmer, more collected, connected, those kinds of ways of eating over time that some of us learn. This way works for me. This way doesn't. So a practice of eating that works for her. And then all of a sudden in her mind comes eating candy, a certain specific thing. And then the thought, I don't want to restrict myself. I don't want to hold back. I don't want to get too strict. I don't want to do that. And so race towards the thing. Yay, it's time to eat. Oh, good. I can eat that thing now. I'm not going to restrict. A painful feeling comes in the mind, that perspective that if I say no, I will be in prison. I will have to endure this urge. I will have to suffer by saying no to that thing that I already know doesn't work in my body, but I don't like it. If I say no, it will be terrible. Really, the easiest path out of this is to say yes to that thing and kind of get it over with, eat it and get it over with. But this is false thinking. This is unquestioned thinking. Because it may not be true for you that every option in that moment, as the mind is telling you, is unbearable and filled with suffering, either eating it or not eating it. What if there is, just in the simple act of pausing, we're not saying that you're never allowed it for the rest of your life, this food, but just simply to notice what's my attitude towards this moment as we think and consider, like, where food appeared in it as a thought. I need to go get some food. What was happening right then? What was the perspective of the mind in that moment as it said, I know, let's go eat something? I mean, sometimes it's just incredibly habitual. There's a comfort and pleasure that just popping in. And I know it's great to question. I always have to figure out the full intricate details of whatever it is that's going on there emotionally and psychically and mentally. Because then if I know, I won't move to food to eat. I'll be more resolved. But just to notice, I'm against whatever's happening in that moment. I don't like that moment. It's a boring moment. It's an emotion-filled moment. It's a sad moment. It's a moment filled with memories where I feel lonely and upset or empty. It's a powerless moment where I don't feel that I can assert what I need. Something is happening there, and it's a thought like that, a perspective about that moment that is not actually true for me. It's not actually true, or else I wouldn't be disturbed. But just to notice I'm disturbed in the moment. I was disturbed. And my habit has been to eat when disturbed, And it's not like you're crazy. Eating is pleasurable. It's just, it's meeting some kind of response or habitual behavior. This behavior is meeting something that has to do nothing to do with hunger, hunger and the need to eat. And there's a pleasure in it. Anyway, be forgiving for yourself, kind to yourself. So this kindness, noticing that what the mind will often say, if I don't get this thing that I'm imagining I really, really, really want to eat, if I don't get it, I'm going to suffer. So let's just go get it, says the mind. But can you absolutely know it's true that you will suffer unless you eat it? If you say no, that will involve some kind of suffering or holding back or willpower. Are you sure it needs to go like that? Are you sure that's everything that you'll experience about the moment, even if that's the way it's gone before? I love these questions. What would kindness do? How would kindness eat in that moment? How would kindness eat if kindness was you the moment before the image comes even of getting that kind of food? You've been eating this kind of food that feels balanced and normal, and like you're not doing that crazy eating, you're not binge eating, you're not having a sensation to purge, you're not doing any of those off balance things with food and eating. You've been eating that way. And then here comes this idea to eat this other thing that, as this one inquirer said, makes her heart beat rapidly and feels actually sort of physically like there's a response in the body. Not even to mention the response in the mind, like that will be very critical the minute you eat it, saying, what's wrong with you? You shouldn't have eaten that. It's like a bully is inside the head, a bully, very critical at you. So that's not going to be fun. But what's going on there where I'm clenched down against the moment, that experience before the picture of food, which sometimes is practically Velcroed to an uncomfortable feeling or boredom, emptiness, a sense of not feeling powerless about anything, feeling like a victim about anything in your life going on, and that occurred to you, and then it feels like you can eat, just some sort of fear. Who would you be without the thought? If I say no to eating food there or doing any of my compulsive behavior, anything, if I say no, I'm going to have to endure something even worse. The craving is just going to get bigger and harder and lasting. It won't go away. It'll just be brutal. It'll be worse, is mainly what the mind is offering. It'll be worse. It'll be worse if I say no. What an interesting thing to sit with. How do you know that that's true? Some of us haven't even let ourselves sit with uncomfortable emotions or feelings or compulsive ideas or the thought of food forever. I'm sharing with the Eating Peace group. It is interesting when you have something like smoking, which I did on and off for 10 years. You have smoking, and then it's very clear when you stop smoking. You are no longer smoking. It's very clear. And then when you take up smoking, we know that that's clear because there you are. And you can live without smoking, easy. And we know that we can survive without it. But actually the mind is saying the very same thing. I remember that feeling when I actually quit. It felt quite quite determined to quit. That I won't survive this moment when I have a craving, but I'm saying no. Craving, no. Craving, no. I won't be able to survive it. I can't endure that. It's intolerable. It's horrendous. We won't make it through. It'll just amp itself up. It'll get louder. It is unkind for that thing to be filled with craving, screaming at me to come do it, that behavior. Buy something, take the drugs, do the activity, eat the food, smoke the thing, all the watch the video, all those things that happen with the experience of reality of that moment. I don't like it, and there's some disturbed feelings and ideas going on there. And I won't be able to tolerate that. That no will be unkind. Is it true? No. But good to notice if your mind has said yes to you. Just letting it be a yes. Some people's minds have said yes. Intolerable. Can't take it. In which case we get to say, can you absolutely know that that's true? If you say no, it won't be tolerable. It is unkind. It feels restrictive. It's horrible. Are you sure that the situation that feels uncomfortable and disrupted, the only way out is to just do the thing you usually do, eat the thing, do the behavior? It does seem like you do the behavior. It's kind of like just the way OCD works. You do the behavior and then you feel relaxed briefly. Briefly is the key word. Just for a little bit. It's compelling because just for a little bit does change the channel. But the thing that's in there is still returns. It's still an underlying disturbance. And notice what happens when you think that saying no is unkind, intolerable. Can't do it. You treat yourself like you're so small and it can be quite dreadful, the attitude you have towards the self and alone. And like that other thing that you like to do, in this case, eat food and eating, is incredibly magnetically powerful. I'm very tiny. It's very big. Mind is just overwhelmed with making as much of the story so real. It's like being seduced into that tale, that story. Yeah, it'll be so unkind. It'll be so good when I do the thing that will relax me about the world, about the moment, about the situation. So who would you be without that story? Who are you without the story? Because there's part of you that does not have that story already. Who would you be without that thought in a moment before your compulsion happens? Without the belief, it'll be intolerable. It'll be full of suffering unless I just do the thing. I can barely stand it unless I do the thing. Who would you be without the thought? Intolerable, suffering, impossible. That a no to that substance, behavior, activity that seems to take the edge off or lower the steam, pressure, release the pressure valve, all the things that these things do. Who would you be without the thought that saying no to that is going to produce more suffering? I mean, what if that's not the case? We're not saying no to it is always the right thing to do. There's no right or wrong here. Because I just noticed I did these things until I didn't. And I still have tendencies of thought patterns that will arrive that seem compulsive in themselves. It's more subtle because behavior and activity doesn't seem to follow. It's like having the work, having inquiry. Who would you be without the thought that saying no is unkind? And yes, it does not mean to starve yourself. that starving yourself is a better plan, because that is unkind also. So, giving your body enough, nourishing yourself with what you actually need physically is an incredibly kind thing to do. Very, very lovely to find what works for you. And I like that this inquirer who brought this up and was sharing, she knows what kind of food works for her and what doesn't. It's pretty clear with her, pretty black and white. It's not that way for everybody. So kind of her to have found that for this particular time in her life. It's great. Without that thought, you might notice, like if I said, I want you to stay as upset and disturbed as possible and put the craving up at a 10 and see if you can get the volume to go to an 11, 12, 13, and do not let it reduce. Keep the craving alive. Keep it wildly alive as much as you can, gripping. You will win the biggest prize in the century if you can make sure you stay in that tension and keep it up high. You wouldn't be able to keep the tension. We're always so fighting of the attention. It's got to go away. This is horrible. You might be shocked to find that if you tried to increase the tension, the compulsion, you wouldn't be able to do that either. You're maybe less in charge. So just actually hands off. Hands off the situation, letting it just ride itself out. All that compulsion, all that intensity, all that the feelings, watching the images spin through your mind. You're remembering what's been past, what you think about that moment, the emptiness, the sadness, whatever's going on in the moment. Just let it all play itself out. The mind is very fast. So it skips around all over the place. It ends the middle of a movie all the time. We don't like it if we see an actual movie. You want to start at the beginning and go through the end. And you want to see what happens at the end. Go through the middle and the end. But the mind will skip right in the middle of a movie that it's playing to you on the inside of your own mind. It just goes, let's think of something else. And it just goes over here. It's very skittish. It's very fickle. It's very busy. It's not that stable. It really isn't. And that's good news. So turning thought around. Could it be kind to say no? Just like, what is here? There's something here that isn't just mental about all this. A solidness of who you are without the thought, without the story. A depth, like gravity that holds you onto planet Earth no matter what you're thinking. Something like that could be here, very stable, very strong, that it wants to come back to. Even the busy, busy mind, perspective you had about that moment before even food came in as a thought to start eating, an empty moment, for example, that everything wants to come back to. It's just an image and a story, and it wants to come back to balance, like sort of a solid line, or ground to stand on. Very solid, very, very centered. No future, no past. Just feeling like the life force buzz inside of you. Just feeling that solid thing that's always been here, always here with you, no matter what you're doing. I know we forget about it if we get compulsive, kind of have addictive thoughts or running. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So even though those run, something very solid here, very solid, just allowing ourselves to notice that, and that everything kind of comes, the crash of a wave comes down to balance. So even that compulsive experience will relax. What is the feeling of kindness? What would kindness do? How would kindness eat? What's the energy of that? Because that is who you are, like a loving kindness, unconditionally loving, unconditional because you've been here always with yourself for your whole entire life. No conditions. Even if you've shouted at yourself, the mind has said, I don't like you unless, and yet still here you are. So just noticing there's something you have access to, that's there, even though it feels sort of mysterious, without a thought, without a thought. So it's unkind to say no, and it's unkind to say yes. Could there be a field like that Rumi poem, out beyond right or wrong? There is a field. Could I meet myself there? What if I just only was willing to do nothing about this for 15 seconds? I know it seems, what? That's so short. Just don't do anything about this craving or having the craving or meeting the craving with the thing that is craved. Just to wait, just to watch, uh, just to let something in you lie down, rest, relax. Can you find it? To just willing to give a little tiny drop of waiting and watching, taking the ride of the roller coaster. The roller coaster comes to a park at the end. Doesn't just keep going on and on forever. It always wants to come back to the end, the bottom of the hill, right? So just seeing what happens, like letting yourself see what happens without a plan. Who are we without our compulsion? And without the idea that it's unkind to say yes and it's unkind to say no, maybe I just don't know for a minute and see what happens. Without knowing, don't know mind, I don't know. And see what happens in your own experience. No right way to do it, no wrong way to do it. Can't do it wrong. Can't do it wrong. What an amazing thing to be with, to access, to just decide that sounds great to explore. I'm willing to explore that. So kind to slow down and pause and just wonder who you are without your story. All right. Lots of love. Take care.